And joining us now is Clinton County Sheriff Dave Favro. Thanks a lot for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Do you agree with the other members of the Sheriff's Association in New York? Should every school in the state have a school resource officer?
Absolutely. It's a very important issue, and children are our most valuable natural resource. We have to do everything we possibly can to provide them safety and security when they're in an educational setting.
Should they be armed?
The law enforcement officer in the school should be armed. I'm totally opposed to arming just civilians or arming teachers. I think that's sending the wrong message and very inappropriate. But a trained professional law enforcement officer definitely should be armed.
Do you think that would be a deterrent to anyone thinking of coming into that school if they knew there was an armed officer there?
I think it's going to be a deterrent to a degree, but I think we also need to be very careful that we don't set up a false sense of security that one person alone is going to be a stop-all, end-all, but it certainly is going to be a starting point. And you have to realize when you put a member, for example, of the sheriff's office into a school district, he now has all of his brothers that are working on the sheriff's department that particular day that have direct contact with him. Portable radio communication, briefings in the morning, conversations about unusual situations and suspicious people. Those are, as far as I'm concerned, as critical or more so than having an armed officer there for the benefit of having an armed officer. If we can get to the nucleus of these problems and we can gather the intelligence and the information from other students, from teachers, from people that visit the school, from visual observations of the neighborhood surrounding the schools day to day, we can prevent these tragedies from happening. That would be the ultimate goal. It's not having an armed officer there to do combat and minimize casualties. It's preventing this from occurring in the first place so people can genuinely feel safe in a school setting.
So you clearly see there are other benefits to having officers there.
Multiple benefits, and that officer has a very significant job, and it's not just carrying around a firearm and getting prepared if somebody comes in for a violent situation, but it's trying to detect and observe to be able to deter these violent situations from occurring. And out of that, you're going to find there's going to be several cases of interest that are going to be brought up, and it could be cases of child abuse, it could be cases of drug abuse and dealing, it could be cases of violence, multiple things that an officer who establishes a good rapport with students in schools is going to be able to gather this intelligence and be able to provide services to the school, to the parents, and to the kids. Something so common that people refer to as bullying. Well, if you can catch it on early enough and you can stop it, now you've made friends with both sides of the kids, and you've also possibly prevented a school violence situation.
We often hear that teachers are the eyes, that they can see kids when they're having trouble at home, if they're going hungry, that the teachers will see that and notice that. Do you think the school resource officer could do that much the same way for kids in trouble and crisis?
They can, and I think most importantly here we need to realize that law enforcement in a school, we are a guest, but we most importantly are a partner with the teachers and with the administration. Communications daily with the teachers, showing them graffiti, showing them signs, educating them a little bit about the law enforcement world and signs to pick up on and to look for with students, and sharing that information with the officer is most valuable. One thing that we run into quite frequently is teachers saying, well, I didn't want to call you because I didn't think it was a big deal and you must be busy and you must get... That's our job. I would rather track down 10,000 bogus calls and be able to avoid one situation than not get called at all and be in the middle of a situation.
Here in Clinton County, you have 3 school resource officers. One is split between 2 schools, and one at CV Tech and one in Beekmantown. So you have 3 right now in the county?
Currently, yes.
You'd like to add 2 more positions, or you're in the process of adding 2 more positions?
Well, we're working with another school district right now to add another full-time deputy sheriff to that school district to be able to serve the 3 buildings that that particular district has. And we've had phone calls, and I have 2 other appointments set up with 2 other school districts that want to look into it as well.
So this isn't a reaction to the school shooting in Parkland. This has been in the works for some time now.
I think it's a tragedy in itself that government has to actually wait and count what is the magical number of deaths that we have to have before we install a traffic light at a dangerous intersection, or before we respond and say we need to come up with a comprehensive plan to be able to make schools safe. When I was elected and started in office as sheriff in 2003, I immediately took my training in my concerns from the City of Plattsburgh and brought it to the county and enhanced our DARE program so that every fifth grader in the county is receiving the DARE program, and also enhanced our school resource officer program by putting somebody full-time in Beekmantown, working in partnership with them, part-time with Saranac and NAC, and also full-time at the BOCES district. And we're going to continue those efforts because I feel very passionately that our children have to feel safe in their home and they have to feel safe in their educational institution, or we as a society are failing them.
Did just about every school district have a school resource officer 10, 15 years ago, along with DARE officers, and have they been eliminated or cut back, and was that primarily funding that got eliminated?
There was a COPS program, Community-Oriented Police Services, that was available, and at that time New York State received a significant amount, and the state police put, I believe, 3 school resource officers in the area schools in Clinton County, and when that funding went away, they went away as well, which was a very unfortunate thing because the schools got used to a good program and some good efforts, but it was high dollars, it was expensive, and when the funding dried up, the officers went away, and that's where the pressure is put on sheriff's departments, not just in Clinton County, but in counties throughout the state. School districts turn to their sheriff saying, what can you do to help us? So we try to use our limited resources to be able to put somebody in the schools, but unfortunately, quite often, we have to pull them out to be able to do other duties.
Lawmakers are now calling for it this year, after the Parkland shooting, to get them in every single school. That's more than 6,500 schools statewide. The estimates are that could be $400 million, which is a lot of money. What do you say to those that think that's simply too expensive, too much?
I think it's an awful lot of money, but I don't think we can put a dollar value. I think we need to take a look at the dynamics and how are we going to fund this. There are many different things. Several years ago, New York State started the Office of Court Administrations, and now they have court officers that are working in courts, protecting judges and protecting people that are in courts, which is a wonderful thing. We need to do that, but at a very high cost. And we also need to take a look at what type of resource are we going to put into the school districts. When the New York State Police had officers in school districts, it was costing close to $100,000 per person, where we can hire almost 2 deputy sheriffs in any county throughout the state for the same cost.
Could it be a retired police officer? Could it be retired veterans who are trained by police officers?
There is a program right now that allows us to rehire a retired police officer or a corrections officer and use them to protect public buildings and infrastructure. So that would fit in the school. And in fact, I have 2 retired troopers right now that work for me under the 209V program. One is a school resource officer and one is doing full-time security at Department of Social Services. And I also have another police officer from Plattsburgh Police Department that's working full-time as a school resource officer, again, under the 209V. That was done in cooperation with our Deputy Sheriff's Union and allowing us to reach out and be able to employ these people, because you've got to be careful of different contracts, and bring them in. So we garner the benefits of their training, of their knowledge, their police instincts, without having to pay additional retirement and additional costs. So I think that would be a very good avenue to explore, as opposed to having to start all new bodies out. That could bring that cost from $400 million down to less than half, because about 52% of the expenses of a police officer is the retirement package and the medical package.
What about arming teachers? The president raised a few eyebrows when he suggested that some teachers could be considered for that, give them bonuses.
Absolutely not. I am totally opposed to that. I think that is one of the worst things any school district could possibly do, and I think most of the teachers, their unions, and the administration would agree with that for many reasons. First of all, when you're put into a critical situation, a life or death situation for a police officer, many times the officer ends up dying because they didn't want to have to take another life. And that's with extensive training. If you put somebody who has devoted their life and education towards building and nurturing lives, how are you going to take one? That's not something that an average person can do. It takes intense training, and you have to really understand the liabilities, the Article 35 in the New York State Penal Law about use of deadly physical force. And then what do you do in a situation if that teacher is holding their own and they're doing well, but now law enforcement shows up and you've got somebody standing there, not in a police uniform, that you don't know, and they're holding a gun. So now I have to make, as a police officer, that critical last-second decision. Well, is this the good guy or the bad guy? Oh, I'm the good guy, I'm the good guy. And then he turns around and shoots me. So it complicates the situation so much more, and it puts teachers in an undue situation. And a problem that I have right now with our educational process, to be quite honest with you, is we are demanding so much more of our teachers. We're not asking them just to teach a curriculum. We're asking them to meet a certain level of standard. We're asking them to be counselors. We're asking them to be advocates and family members. And there's just so much demand that we're putting on our educators. We can't continue to do that without the system breaking. We need to let people that are trained and responsible for this type of situation to handle the situation, not adding more burden onto educators.
Is the security in most schools here in the North Country good enough, or could it be enhanced?
The fact that up here in the North Country we are so nice, we are so open-armed to people, somewhat naive to an extent that, well, this really wouldn't happen up here. And that's where people don't stop and realize that it can be very, very close to us. April 20th, 1999 was the Columbine school shooting. And I'll never forget that as long as I live, because one of the sixth graders that I worked with in Stafford Middle School was Eric Harris. And he was one of the key components in the Columbine shooting, who attended Stafford Middle School right here in Plattsburgh. His family came in with the Plattsburgh Air Force Base in 1991. So it can be that rooted right here in our community, right under our nose, and we don't even realize it. Back then, people would have said, no, that's not going to happen. There it is.
Sheriff Dave Favro, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it. This is a very important issue to me.